You ever trust someone so deeply, so stupidly, that it takes something massive to realize you never really knew them? That was me with Brooke, my older sister. She was 2 years ahead of me in high school, popular, confident, always perfectly styled. Meanwhile, I was the weird art girl who wore oversized sweaters and filled my sketchbook with things no one ever saw. But I looked up to her because she was my sister, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Trust family? I never thought she'd be the one to humiliate me, especially not over him. His name was Jacob. Tall, sweet, goofy, in the best way. He transferred to our school junior year and ended up in my art elective. First day, he saw me sketching and said, "Wow, you're like scary talented." No one had ever said that to me. I laughed awkwardly and shrugged it off. But he didn't stop there. Every class, he sat beside me, asked what I was drawing, genuinely listened. He made me feel seen, and little by little, I developed a crush, the kind that makes your stomach flip when he says your name. But I never told anyone, not even Brooke, until that night in the kitchen. It was late, and I was making tea. Brooke came in from cheer practice, hair tied up, flawless even in sweats. She opened the fridge, looked at me, and said, "You've been weird lately. Who's the guy?" I laughed. "What? Come on. I'm your sister. I know the look." So I told her. Half a smile, cheeks warm, I said, "His name's Jacob." She leaned on the counter, eyebrows raised. "Jacob Bennett? From your art class?" I nodded. She gave a slow, amused grin. "Well, he's cute, kinda nerdy, but in a charming way. You told him you like him?" "No," I said quickly. "God, no. I'm just letting it be what it is." She nodded. "Smart. You don't want to freak him out?" The way she said that should have been a red flag, but I was too caught up in the moment, too naive. What I didn't know was that she already knew. And worse, Jacob had already heard something from her, something I never said. It happened 2 weeks later. Jacob stopped sitting next to me in art class, stopped walking with me to lunch, stopped responding to my messages. At first, I thought maybe he was just busy, distracted, but then I saw the look he gave me at my locker one morning. Awkward, guilty, pitying, and everything inside me sank. The truth came out in the worst way. I was in the library, minding my business, when I overheard it. Two girls from Brooke's cheer squad were talking at the table behind me. "I can't believe she actually thought Jacob liked her," one of them whispered. The other laughed. "Brooke said she was like totally obsessed with him. Like, she made up whole stories. Creepy." My heart stopped. I slowly stood and walked past their table, hoping they'd stop, but they didn't even notice me. "She even showed him one of her poems," the first one added. "Brooke said she found it in her room and read it out loud." That's when I knew. She broke into my sketchbook, read something private, and made it into a joke. That night, I didn't say anything. I didn't scream at her, didn't confront her with tears, didn't even let her know I heard. I just smiled through dinner, and I started paying attention. Over the next few days, I noticed how often Brooke performed. To mom, to dad, to teachers. Always the perfect daughter, always supportive of me when someone else was watching. But I caught her twice scrolling through my texts, once picking up my phone when I left it unlocked. She was looking for something, trying to twist my feelings into fuel for gossip, and I had finally had enough. So I did what she never expected. I baited her. One Saturday, I waited until we were alone in the house. She was scrolling Instagram on the couch, and I sat beside her casually. "Hey," I said. Jacob texted me again. Her eyes snapped to me. "Oh?" she said, voice light. "He said he's sorry for being distant. He wants to hang out sometime, just as friends." I shrugged. "But you know what? I still like him, a little." She smirked. "Careful, girl. He might just be being nice." I nodded. "You're right. I probably shouldn't get my hopes up." She nodded too quickly. Then I stood. "I'm gonna go take a nap." I left my phone on the table. And hidden right under it? A small recording device. I'd borrowed it from AV Club, set to auto-record, and just like I thought, 20 minutes later, I heard her voice, clear as day. She's still not over him. God, it's embarrassing. Then she called someone, probably one of her friends, or maybe Jacob himself. She really thinks he wants to hang out. Can you believe that? I swear, it's like she creates fantasy versions of people. It's not even normal. I listened. Every word, jaw tight, stomach burning. She even said she'd been writing about him again. I think I'm gonna take pictures of her sketchbook, just in case anyone ever doubts me. That's when I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking, but my focus, crystal clear. She wanted to humiliate me? Fine, but this time, I'd make sure she heard herself. And so would he. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing her words, my sister's voice, casual and sharp, cutting through me over and over. She's still not over him. She creates fantasy versions of people. It's not even normal. Not angry. Not mocking. Just dismissive, like I was entertainment. Like I wasn't a real person, just her little sister. Her storyline. Her source of drama when things got slow. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, wondering what I'd done to deserve that kind of cruelty from someone I shared a roof with, a childhood with, a life with. Brooke didn't just tell lies, she twisted the truth, used pieces of who I was and stretched them until I looked pathetic, unhinged. But the worst part? She knew I'd never confront her, because I wasn't like her. I wasn't loud, or popular, or strategic. But what I was done. Done letting people misrepresent me. Done being the punchline. And especially done letting her paint me as a stalker when I'd barely even told myself how I felt about Jacob. The next day was Monday. I walked into school early and waited by Jacob's locker. When he arrived, his face went blank, like he didn't know whether to say hi or keep walking. So I spoke first. Can I talk to you? 2 minutes. That's all I ask. He hesitated, then nodded. We stepped aside to a quiet corner near the science wing. I took a deep breath and pulled out my earbuds. This is going to sound insane, I said, but I need you to hear something. He looked confused, nervous, but I pressed play. The recording started low, Brooke's voice floating up through the static. She's still not over him. God, it's embarrassing. His eyes widened. I kept it going. I swear it's like she creates fantasy versions of people. And then, the kicker. I think I'm going to take pictures of her sketchbook, just in case anyone ever doubts me. When I hit pause, Jacob's mouth was slightly open. He looked stunned. Then he looked furious. That's your sister? I nodded. That's what she really thinks of me, or at least what she wants people to think. He was quiet for a long time. Then, she told me that you sent her poems to analyze, that you asked her to talk to me for you. I never did, I said. I never even gave her the poem she read. She stole it from my sketchbook. He looked away, jaw clenched. I believed her, he said quietly. I thought maybe you were just being immature. But you weren't. She was lying. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I just looked him in the eyes. I liked you, Jacob. I still do, but not enough to lose myself trying to prove it. He looked up. You don't have to say anything, I added. I didn't do this for your validation. I just wanted the truth out there, and you deserve to hear it. He nodded slowly. Thank you for trusting me with this. Then, he said something I didn't expect. You want to walk to class together, and just like that, something inside me cracked open. Not because I'd won him, but because I hadn't lost myself. Word spread fast. I didn't post the recording, didn't blast it over the loudspeakers or upload it to TikTok, but I didn't keep it a secret either. And Brooke, she knew. It was lunchtime when she cornered me. We were in the quad. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were stormy. You recorded me. I shrugged. I left my phone on the table. You decided to talk. Not my fault you can't keep your lies straight, she hissed. You made me sound crazy. No, I said. You did that on your own. That night at home was tense. Mom noticed Brooke's mood but didn't ask. Dad was working late, Brooke barely touched her dinner. But me, I slept like a baby. The next day, Jacob sat beside me in art class again. No announcement. No big deal. Just him pulling up a stool, smiling slightly, and saying, "What are we sketching today?" It was simple. It was everything. Later that week, someone in school asked me if I'd gotten revenge on my sister. I shook my head. This wasn't revenge. It was recognition. For the first time, people saw me not as Brooke's sister, not as the weird art girl, but as a girl who stood up for herself, who didn't scream, who didn't fight, who just let the truth speak in the voice of the person who tried to bury it. I didn't need to ruin her reputation. She did that herself. All I did was press play. By Wednesday, the school hallways felt different. People didn't look at me the same anymore. They looked at her. There was a new kind of silence when Brooke passed through a group of girls, a weird pause when she smiled too brightly or tossed her hair like she was in a shampoo commercial. People weren't dumb. They started putting it together. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew. She'd lied to him about me. Brooke tried to carry on like usual, still wore her matching sets, still took selfies by her locker, still laughed too loudly when she passed Jacob in the hall. But her eyes, they were different, like someone clinging to a mask that wasn't sticking anymore. At home, it was like walking across thin glass. She barely spoke to me. When she did, it was clipped forced smiles in front of Mom, too tight good nights like we were strangers stuck in the same space. I should have felt triumphant, but honestly, I felt tired. It's funny how exhausting it is to defend your own truth. How much energy it takes to just exist when someone spent so long trying to rewrite you. I still had to go to school, still had to take tests, show up for art club, do my chore, but in the background of everything was the whisper, "Is that the sister Brooke lied about?" And then came the incident. It happened Thursday afternoon. I just left art class and was heading to my locker when I heard shouting, not just casual arguing, yelling. And it was coming from the front steps. I rushed over just as a crowd was forming, people with their phones out, whispering. And there, in the middle of it, was Brooke, arguing with Jacob. "You think you know her?" she snapped. "She's playing the victim." Jacob stayed calm. "I know what I heard. Your own words, Brooke." No one edited that. Her voice rose. She made me look like a monster. He raised an eyebrow. "You did that yourself." The crowd gasped. A few people chuckled. Brooke's face turned red. "You think she's some innocent girl? Please, she's always been jealous of me. Of everything. She never said a word about you," Jacob said. "You brought her up every time." Brooke's mouth opened, then closed. And just like that, she walked away, stormed through the crowd, backpack swinging, eyes burning. I didn't know Jacob had it in him. I mean, he'd always been kind, but that day, he was protective of me. After school, I found a note in my locker. "You don't have to keep explaining yourself to people who already know the truth, Jay." I folded it neatly and put it in my sketchbook, right next to the poem Brooke once stole. This time, I wrote a new one beside it. One about betrayal, yes, but also about survival, because that's what this was turning into. Not just a story about being hurt, but a story about coming back. That night at home, Mom finally asked me about the rumor. We were washing dishes when she said, "I heard something weird at the store today. One of the other moms said you and Brooke had some falling out." I dried a plate and kept my voice even. "She told a lie." I let the truth speak for itself. Mom raised an eyebrow. "About a boy?" I nodded. She sighed. "You two used to be so close." I didn't answer, because we hadn't been close in years. We'd just been nearby. There's a difference. Later, I went up to my room. Brooke's door was closed, light off, silent. I didn't knock, didn't ask how she was, because for the first time in a long time, I didn't owe her anything. Not my kindness, not my peace, not my silence. That weekend, I went to the park with my sketchbook, sat on a bench near the lake, and guess who showed up? Jacob. He walked over, hands in his hoodie pocket, and asked, "Room for one more?" I smiled and scooted. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then he said, "You know, when I first heard what Brooke said, I thought maybe it was true. Because people want to believe drama." I nodded. But then I remembered the girl who helped me mix paint that first week. The one who made fun of my cartoon doodles, but saved everyone I left behind. I laughed. "She didn't sound obsessed," he added. "She sounded kind. And real." I looked at him. "Thank you. For listening. And for standing up." He shrugged. "It was the easiest decision I've made in a while. I don't know what'll happen with Jacob. Maybe we'll stay friends. Maybe more. But that's not even a point anymore. Because this story, it's not about getting the guy. It's about getting me back. And for the first time in a long time, I like who I'm becoming." The funny thing about standing up for yourself, people start seeing you differently. But more importantly, you start seeing yourself differently. And once you've tasted that kind of self-respect, it's really, really hard to go back. The week after the Jacob incident, I started walking into school with my head higher. Not because I wanted people to talk, but because for the first time in forever, I didn't care if they did. I stopped avoiding eye contact, stopped apologizing just for existing. And when people whispered, I let them, because I knew the truth. And now, so did they. I even said yes when my art teacher asked me to submit something for the district showcase. I almost said no because Brooke had always entered, always won. But this time, I didn't want to shrink for her comfort. I picked one of my boldest pieces, a girl standing at the edge of a cliff, wind tearing her hair back, arms open, eyes closed, alone, but not afraid. I called it Air. When I told Jacob, he smiled and said, "That's the most you title I've ever heard." Back at home, though, the storm was still brewing. Brooke was spiraling, and she didn't know how to hide it anymore. One night, I caught her trying to log into my laptop. I'd left it in the kitchen charging while I did homework upstairs. When I came down to grab a snack, I found her hunched over it, typing in guesses. She jumped like she'd been burned when she saw me. I was just checking something. I said nothing, just unplugged it, and walked away. But I knew she was looking for something to flip on me. Anything. The next morning, she tried a new tactic. Fake nice. "Hey," she said, while I ate cereal, "did you want me to help you pick out something for the art show? I still have that necklace you like." I looked up. "You mean the one you borrowed and never gave back?" She blinked. "Right," I added calmly. "No thanks." Her lips tightened. "I'm trying here." "No," I said. "You're managing damage. That's not the same." At school the shift was obvious. Brooke still had her circle, but the energy had changed. She was quieter now, less bold, less smug. Even her best friend Kayla had started pulling away, eating lunch with the dance team instead. Reputation is a fragile thing, and Brooke had built hers on control, on appearance. Now that she couldn't control me, the cracks were showing. Meanwhile, I started spending more time with people who didn't ask me to shrink. Jacob and I began working on an art collab. He sketched cartoons, and I painted them into surreal landscape. We posted the finished piece online, and it got shared by one of the school's clubs. People stopped calling me Weird Art Girl. They started calling me Bri, and I loved it. But it wasn't just about school. It was about me finally seeing my own reflection without Brooke's fingerprints all over it. I stopped rereading my texts before sending them, stopped asking if I was too much or too awkward. And I definitely stopped giving her power over how I saw myself. Then, one evening, something unexpected happened. Dad called a family meeting, which was weird. We hadn't had one of those since middle school. When Brooke broke the garage door and tried to blame it on a raccoon, we all sat in the living room, awkward as ever. Mom on the edge of the couch, Brooke scrolling her phone. Me curled up in the chair by the window, bracing myself. Dad cleared his throat. "There's been a lot of tension lately. Your mom and we've noticed." Brooke rolled her eyes. "Wow, Sherlock." Brooke, Mom warned. I'm just saying, it's not like I'm the only one making things tense. Dad frowned. No one's accusing anyone, but we do need to talk about respect and boundaries. He looked between us. Brielle, we heard from Mrs. Landers that you're entering the art showcase. That's incredible. I nodded slowly. Thanks. He turned to Brooke. And you've been quiet lately. Everything okay? She shrugged. I'm fine. But her voice cracked just slightly. And for the first time, I felt something strange. Not pity, not revenge, just sadness. Because she didn't know how to be real. Not even with us. After the meeting, I stayed behind while everyone else cleared out. I looked at Dad and asked quietly, "Why now?" He rubbed his face. Because I saw the recording. Your mom played it. I froze. She wanted to understand what happened. And, Brielle, I'm sorry. We didn't know she could be that cruel. I blinked fast. It's not about the recording. It's about years of this. I know, he said. I just wish we'd paid more attention. He left it at that. And honestly, it was enough. Because for once they saw me. Not just the quiet one. Not just Brooke's sister. Me. Later that night, I opened my sketchbook to a blank page. And I wrote a new piece. Not a poem. Not a drawing. Just a message. You don't need everyone to believe you. You just need to believe yourself first. I closed the book and went to bed smiling. The night of the art showcase, I almost didn't go. Not because I wasn't ready, but because some part of me still held on to that little voice in the back of my head that said, "You don't belong on a stage. You're not the sister they brag about. No one will clap for you unless she's next to you." But then I remembered something Jacob said just the day before, when we were hanging up our joint piece in the school hallway. Let them see you. All of you. That's what makes your art real. And I realized he wasn't talking about the painting. I showed up that Friday night wearing a simple dress I had picked myself. Hair brushed back in a low bun. Sketchbook in my bag. Not because I needed it, but because it felt like armor. Mom and Dad came too. To my surprise, Brooke did not. I didn't ask why. I didn't want to know. All I knew was this night. It was mine. The auditorium was warm and buzzing with chatter. Art lined every wall. Sculptures, watercolors, digital pieces. Some were polished, some messy, all real. And right in the middle of it stood my painting. Air. A girl with the wind at her back, staring down the edge of something terrifying. And doing it anyway. It was big, bold, and somehow still gentle. Just like I wanted it. Jacob's parents came too. They stood beside him and smiled as he pointed to our collab piece. His mom looked at me and said, "You made it feel like a dream." And I smiled back, because it was. After a short reception, the announcement started. A panel of teachers and local artists had chosen 3 standout pieces to honor. They weren't ranked, just recognized. When they read my name, Brielle Carter, for air, the room clapped. Not politely, not awkwardly, loudly. People meant it. And for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink. I stepped forward, accepted the little certificate and ribbon, and smiled like someone who knew she earned it. Because I did. On the car ride home, Mom kept turning to look at me. She finally said, "I didn't know you had that in you." I smiled. "That's okay. I always did." She didn't argue. She just nodded, and that silence said more than any apology ever could. When we got home, Brooke's bedroom door was closed. But something was different. She hadn't posted anything online all night. No selfies, no comments, not even a sarcastic story caption. And part of me wondered if maybe she'd been watching the school's live stream. The show had been broadcast on the district website for parents who couldn't attend. Had she seen me standing under the spotlight? Had she heard the cheer? Later, I found a note slipped under my door. It was short. Only one sentence. "I didn't think you'd actually win." There was no name, but I didn't need one. I didn't write back. I didn't go knock on her door. because I was done chasing closure from someone who didn't know how to give it. The next week, something weird started happening at school. Kids I barely spoke to, started asking me about art, not just complimenting, but asking, "How do you come up with your concepts? Do you sell prints? Could you maybe design our club shirt?" Even my English teacher asked if I'd consider illustrating the cover for the school's annual poetry collection. And every time, I said yes. Not because I wanted attention, but because I finally believed my work deserved space. Then came the most surprising part. Jacob asked me to go with him to the spring formal. He didn't make a big thing of it. No balloons, no crowd, just a quiet moment by the lockers. "Would you maybe want to go to the dance with me?" I blinked. "You want to?" He smiled. "Yeah. Not as a stunt. Not to prove anything. Just because I like you." I nodded. "Okay. Yes." And for once I didn't overthink it. But Brooke did. Because later that night, I heard her crying in the bathroom. I don't know if it was about the show, or Jacob, or just everything unraveling at once. And maybe, deep down, I wanted to feel smug, but all I felt was sad. Because even after everything, she still believed the world owed her more than it gave me. And that kind of bitterness, it eats you alive. I went back to my room, opened my sketchbook, and started something new. Not a drawing, a letter. One I'll probably never send. To her. "Dear Brooke, you tried to bury me in whispers, but I learned to speak louder with colors, with shapes, with truth. And now, people see me, not as your shadow, not as your embarrassment, but as me. And that's all I ever wanted." Brielle. Brooke didn't talk to me for 3 days straight after I got asked to the dance. 3 days. Not a glance, not a comment, not even a backhanded compliment disguised as concern, which honestly was kind of peaceful. But what she didn't understand is that my silence wasn't spite. It was protection. For both of us. Because I wasn't angry anymore. Not exactly. I was just done. Done being baited. Done being her emotional punching bag. Done trying to fix something she never even admitted was broken. Mom asked once, at dinner, "You two used to be so close. What happened?" I didn't answer. Because how do you explain years of small cuts? How do you explain being quietly erased in your own home? You don't. You just stop bleeding for other people. Still, something shifted that week. Brooke was quieter at school too. No loud hallway jokes. No mirror selfies in the girls' bathroom. No cheer practice photos posted to her story. I even heard someone whisper, "I think she's taking a break from socials." Something about stress. And a part of me thought, maybe she's finally starting to see herself the way I had to for years. That's when the email came. I was sitting in the library during study hall working on a sketch for a custom art commission. Yeah, I had those now when a message popped up on my school laptop. Subject: from Brooke Body. "Can we talk? Alone. Not at home." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know what she wanted, but I said yes. Out of curiosity, out of caution, and maybe out of a tiny flicker of hope. We met behind the gym after last period. She was already waiting. Hood up, arms crossed, like she was hiding from the sun and herself. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, eyes flicking up and down like she was still deciding whether to attack or apologize. "I almost didn't," I said. "So say what you want." She was quiet for a second. Then blurted, "I didn't mean for it to go that far." I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't mean to lie to Jacob? Or steal my sketchbook? Or call me obsessed to your friends?" "I didn't think it mattered," she snapped, then flinched. "I mean back then. You were always just quiet. You didn't fight back. You let me be me." "No," I said slowly. "I let myself survive you." She looked like she'd been slapped. "I didn't realize I made you feel that way," she said quietly. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My existence was the answer. She ran a hand through her hair and sat on the bench. "I was jealous," she mumbled. I blinked. "Of what?" "Of how people looked at you. Like you had depth. like you didn't need the spotlight. And somehow that made you more. That caught me off guard. You had everything, I said. No, she said. I had attention, not everything. There's a difference. For a second we were quiet, and in that quiet, something heavy passed between us. Years of rivalry she never admitted. Years of silence I never questioned. I'm not asking for you to forgive me, she finally said. But I didn't want this to end like we were enemies. I let her words sit. And then gently, we were never enemies, Brooke. We were just never equals. Her mouth opened, closed. No denial. Just understanding. Real, painful, honest understanding. We didn't hug, didn't cry, didn't magically go back to being sisters. But when we walked home separately, I felt lighter. Not because I trusted her again, but because I no longer needed her apology to define my peace. That night, Jacob texted me. Still want to go dress shopping for formal this weekend? I smiled and replied, only if you let me pick the color. He sent back a winking emoji. Deal. And for once I felt the quiet joy of being someone who got to be soft again. Someone who had faced the worst version of someone she loved and didn't let it destroy her. At school the next day, Brooke walked by me in the hallway. She didn't say anything, but she didn't look through me either, and that was enough. Spring formal came faster than I expected, and this time, I didn't dread it. I wasn't trying to disappear into the background or wear something that wouldn't attract attention. I actually wanted to be seen, not because I had something to prove, but because I finally believed I deserved to take up space. Jacob and I went shopping at a little boutique downtown. It was the kind of store Brooke would have mocked for being too basic, but I loved it. Soft lighting, quiet music, dresses that didn't try too hard. I picked a deep green one with an off-shoulder sleeve and soft pleats. It wasn't flashy, but when I tried it on, I felt like me, not a background character in someone else's story. When I stepped out of the dressing room, Jacob blinked, actually blinked. You look. He cleared his throat. Perfect. I smiled. Good. Then it's the one. At home I hung it up in my closet. Mom peeked in later and gasped, oh honey, that color. It's like it was made for you. For a second I waited for the other shoe to drop. Some comment about Brooke, or how we should include her, but it didn't come. She just said, I'm really proud of you lately. And I said, thanks, Mom. Simple. Soft. Real. The night of the dance, I did my own makeup, didn't ask Brooke, didn't copy her Pinterest board, just kept it simple, glowy skin, soft eyeliner, a little sparkle near the eyes, and when I looked in the mirror, I smiled, not because I was shocked, but because I finally recognized myself, that girl looking back. She wasn't weak, she wasn't obsessed, she wasn't someone's sidekick, she was centered, solid, and strong. Jacob picked me up with a crooked tie and a bouquet of daisies, my favorite, because roses felt too dramatic. We laughed the whole way to the venue, and when we walked in, hand in hand, it felt like all the noise around us dimmed. The gym was decked out in silver streamers and soft lights. Music pulsed through the speakers. Everyone looked glossy and excited. And yes, people stared when we walked in. But this time, I didn't lower my head. I smiled. Because they weren't whispering about me anymore. They were whispering for me. We danced a little, took silly photos, even joined a group that played a chaotic game of charades by the punch bowl. Everything felt light and right. Then, during a slow song, I caught sight of her. Brooke. I didn't know she was coming. She must have arrived late. She wore a red dress that shimmered under the lights, standing alone near the photo backdrop. For a second, our eyes met, and I braced myself for the usual tight-lipped smile or sarcastic wave. But instead, she nodded. Small, subtle, but real, and I nodded back. Later, while Jacob got us drinks, Brooke approached me. She looked tired, but not in a mean way, just like someone who'd been holding their breath too long. I saw your name in the Spring Gallery newsletter, she said. Oh? Yeah. They posted about your showcase piece getting requested by a college rep. I nodded. Yeah. They asked for a print. She stared at me for a moment. That's amazing. Really? I blinked. Thanks. Another pause. I don't think I ever told you this, she said. But you're actually kind of brilliant. I almost laughed. Kind of. She smirked. Let's not get crazy. But then she added, I mean it. That moment wasn't perfect, but it was human. And maybe that's all we ever really needed. Not a magical sisterly bond. Not forgiveness tied up in a bow. Just honesty, acknowledgement, respect. The rest of the night I danced without guilt, without shame, without fear that someone might twist my joy into something embarrassing. Because now I owned my story, and no one could take that from me. At the end of the night, Jacob walked me to my door. You looked happy tonight, he said. I was. He hesitated, then leaned in and kissed my cheek. I'm really glad I know the real you. And for once, I didn't feel nervous or giddy. I just felt calm. Inside, I took off my heels, washed off my makeup, and pulled out my sketchbook. One last page. And on it, I wrote, when they tried to define me with whispers, I replied with color. I didn't expect everything to change overnight. Brooke didn't suddenly become my best friend. Jacob and I didn't ride off into some perfect teen romance. Mom and Dad still had their blind spots, but something had shifted. In them, in her, and especially in me. The Monday after the dance, I walked into school early. No butterflies, no fake confidence, just me, comfortable, steady, whole. Jacob met me by the lockers and handed me a coffee. He'd written B in Sharpie across the cup sleeve. That tiny detail made me smile more than I care to admit. First period, my art teacher called me up after class. I wanted you to know, she said. The college rep who saw your piece, he's from Brookdale School of Design. And he asked for your portfolio. I blinked. My portfolio? She nodded. He said your piece had emotional maturity, that you're someone who tells the truth with your hands. I swallowed hard, because that's all I'd ever wanted to be heard, even without words. When I got home, I went straight to my sketchbook. I started gathering everything. My best pieces, a few poems, some mixed media work I hadn't shown anyone yet. I didn't even stop to second guess myself, because finally, I wasn't drawing for validation. I was drawing to breathe. That night at dinner, Brooke actually sat at the table again. We didn't talk much, but when I mentioned the college rep, she didn't flinch. She just said, "That's really cool, Bri." And it didn't sound forced. It sounded like support. A few days later, I got called to the counselor's office. My first reaction was panic. Had something gone wrong? Had someone stirred up drama again? But when I walked in, Mrs. Doyle smiled gently. I heard about the art recognition, she said, and I also wanted to talk to you about next year. I blinked. What about it? Well, she said, folding her hands, I think you're ready to take on a leadership role in the creative writing club. Maybe even help organize the spring showcase. I froze. Me. She smiled. Yes, you. You found your voice, Brielle. And it's powerful. Walking back to class, I passed a group of freshmen whispering by their lockers. I caught one of them point at me. That's her, one girl said. The one who exposed her sister. I paused, then kept walking, because I wasn't embarrassed by that title anymore. Let them know. Let them remember. A few weeks later, our school published the spring poetry collection. On the cover, one of my sketches, a hand holding a paintbrush, dipped in fire. Below it, the title Truth Doesn't Whisper, and in small print, artwork by Brielle Carter. I carried a copy home in my bag, and when I opened it that night, I flipped to the last page. My poem was there. The one I wrote after the night Brooke lied to Jacob. I read it again slowly, and this time, I didn't cry. Spring faded into summer. Jacob and I started spending more time together. Not as a couple, exactly, but as something real, something built on friendship and mutual respect. We made art, watched weird documentaries, ate fries on the hood of his car while the sun went down, and every time he looked at me, it wasn't with pity or surprise. It was with recognition. Brooke eventually started posting online again. Different now. Less filters, less curated drama, more real things. Photos of her reading, volunteering, even helping mom at her weekend baking events. We still weren't close, but we weren't enemies. We were sisters. In progress. And honestly, that was more than enough. One night, toward the end of summer, I found Brooke standing in the hallway outside my room. She looked nervous. "I read your poem," she said softly. "I didn't realize how much it hurt you until I saw it written down like that." I shrugged. "I didn't write it for you." "I know," she said, "but I'm glad I read it anyway." She lingered a second longer, then added, "I'm proud of you," then walked away. Just like that. No apology, no dramatics, but I felt it. And that was the moment I realized, sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's living in a truth so bright that even the people who tried to dim it can't help but feel it. My sister told a lie that nearly crushed me. I answered with a truth no one could ignore. And when they finally saw who I really was, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I simply let them watch. She thought she could ruin my life with a lie. My sister told my crush that I was obsessed with him, humiliating me behind my back, turning our school into a whisper network of cruel gossip. But I didn't scream. I recorded everything. And when the truth came out, I wasn't the one embarrassed. This powerful story of emotional betrayal, self-worth, and poetic revenge will stay with you long after it ends.